This is Stephanie with Hightower Stitching. Today's video is weaver's block for people who quilt and or sew. It's going to include the materials and the directions for an 8-inch base that'll make a 7.5-inch block. I'm going to start by taking a short visit into the past. Some of you will know what these are. These are weaving racks that used to come with the cotton pot holders. And since we no longer can get those socks that will fit across here, the pieces that were cut off the socks, I've got those, and I just couldn't get rid of them. And if you remember that with the weaving, you do a set of lines going across with the materials that you're using, and you fill that one side up, and then you turn it and you fill up the other side. And if that's kind of vague, I'll get to it in a minute a little bit better. Here's an 8-inch square, and it's just a piece of back fabric. It could be anything. It doesn't even show when you get finished, so it could be some scrap. And what I did was I went ahead and I drew a line at 4 inches going up so that I can sort of see where the middle is. And you may actually want to start with your strips of material in the middle and go one direction and then build the other, because most of the time I came out with 14 strips. Sometimes, depending on your material, you might end up with 13, and it won't matter. And that's what this is talking about over here on the side, that you'd have 7 strips going up and 7 strips going down. The other thing was, when I got done, because of the way we're going to do this with bias materials, I'd have a raw edge on the back. And so I wanted to make sure, and I wasn't going to sew all of those edges, so I wanted to make sure that it wouldn't come undone, even if you had to wash it. So this is, and there are different things you can use, and this is just a piece of Wonder Web that I had. And make it smaller than the outside of the box. It probably doesn't even have to be this big, just so that it will hold the materials in place. Here's one of the completed blocks, and you can see the strips that run across. These are 1/2 inch. It's a size 12 on the binding maker. The nice thing about this is I already had a lot of strips cut, because if you remember, I have that box that makes me feel guilty sometimes. It's the dark 1-inch strips and the light 1-inch strips. So I went to that box and I pulled out some lights and some darks. I ran them through the binding maker. And one of the things that I learned, no matter how I held the little metal piece, which makes it, because you slide the fabric through it, it was hot. So I went and grabbed one of my gloves that I use for gardening, and I used that to hold the top, and then I just did great just going all the way through there. And then I ended up with a bin full of those pieces. And when I started out, I left them all laying really nice and neat and flat, but you can see I've been digging in that box. So let's look at the first part. And in this one, I just started at the bottom. And I think the next couple later I might start in the middle and then have 7 going down. But I left a little bit of a white down here on the edge, because when I come back the other way, I'm going to want that to be where I can do my sewing on there. So I just started, and I eyeballed it to be straight. And I would lay the first strip, and I pin it. Now, if you notice, I didn't pin it right up here against the edge, because when I get the whole thing done, for this part, each of these strips going across, I'm going to do a line of stitching down through there. And one time I used invisible thread, one time I just used plain white thread, because I haven't decided yet what I'm going to do with these. This is just the fun part of getting a bunch of blocks together. And sometimes I just let them run off the edge, or I trim them, but leave some material over there. I'd come over to the right hand side and I'd pin it, and there again I'd actually turn the square around and pin it so I could see it was straight, and leave some room for sewing over there. And then sometimes when I wanted to make sure I was still sticking to the straight, I would put the pins in the middle too, and those are just there to help keep it straight. This is one that's got all 14 strips in it all the way across, and I have sewn down that edge. And you say, well, how did it get so neat? Well, just turn it over and start and come down right on the edge right there. And so you haven't wasted much material at all. Then I did the same on the other side. And the one thing is just to be sure your pins are not too close to that. And I've already pulled the pins out of both sides. Now, one of the things that I figured out too was when I was making the blocks, that I hung on to the pieces when I cut them off. So let's say I had a lot of this nice blue and black. Well, I'd repeat it, and then I still had a piece left, and I kept it because I want to use it when I run the other direction. And so I can repeat several of the colors in here, and then every time I'd have enough, like I said, I'd save that. And when I get ready to weave it, I'm going to turn it facing me. I'm going to pull all of these pins out. And I'm going to just start over here on one end. You don't need anything but your hand. Well, I'm really being right-handed. I started over here. And I went under, over, under, over. And as you go, you're going to find that it really is fun doing this row, using some of those colors and then adding some new colors. And then you just gently ease it up against this white line that you've made there, your stitching line, and pin it again. Pin on this end away from the edge, and then pin on this edge also, and that helps you to keep it straight. Then get your next color and start and go over and under. Now, when you get down to the end, when you make pot holders, they had a special hook that ran up and down and went like that. And I'm sure I've got it somewhere. But I actually, doing a 1/2 of an inch, didn't have a lot of space. And so I would work it in and out using a set of tweezers. I want to tell you, that makes it so easy, because you can actually, then I think there I started over here. I slid the tweezer down. It grabbed the fabric, pulled it up, and then I did the next one, and then I smoothed it out and pinned it, and then just kept going all the way across there. It didn't take any time at all. And then when I got over here, pull it out and smooth it, and then turn it around and then pin this one too, and that was your last part. And then you're going to do just what we did when we did these strips when they were like this. You're going to take and you're going to turn it over, and you're going to stitch on that white edge, and that should catch all of those pieces that you've done there. So these are extra pieces that I had because I'm going to use those. I'm going to go back and finish that one, and that's that. Then I've got some different samples of ones that I did. And you can see it goes really fast. And you have some fun times and some colors. Like, look at this one. I just shocking blue, pink, actually stuck up there. And that's what happens when you have some of the material to run the other way. Then this one's really pretty. It's got a red in it, and it really shows up. So it was good practice in doing that. Okay, now here comes the part that's going to stabilize it. All you have to do is turn it over, and you remember I had a piece of Wonder Web underneath there and a steam iron. Then I used my steam iron. I started in the middle, and this is muslin, so it's kind of got some give, and then I just pressed it. I didn't put a press cloth on there because the Wonder Web was underneath there, and it's really stabilized it. So this is going to be ready for whatever I decide I'm going to do. And it seems like there's a lot of little projects you can do with those. And if I get real creative and come up with a lot, I'll tell you. But I'm looking at things like a table topper, just something that's decorative. You know, you don't want a whole quilt made out of this because actually it's sort of heavy when you get the blocks. So I was having a good time with that bias, and I went ahead and bought one of those little kits. It's not expensive, and it's got just the different things that you can use. And so I said, I'm going to go with the biggest one, and it's right here on the end. And it takes a 2-inch strip of material. Well, I got a 2-inch strip of box, so I did it. And I want to show you what happened. You can learn from my finding out. In this one, I was using like 3 main colors, 4 main colors. And I was going to use them going both ways. And I thought, oh, this is great, red, white, and blue. But look at it. If you look real close, you see these white blocks that are so close together, and the blues, and the red, and then all of a sudden the reds. And as queer as it looks on here, it is weird looking. So then I said, well, what would be a good way to do this? And so I said, I'm going to run light ones one direction. And so my bottom has got the colorful pieces. And then the other part had the light going across here. And you can see that, and they're not the same. I don't have any this time that are the same going horizontally and going vertically. And that really seemed to make a difference. And it made a nice bunch of wide bias. And it's amazing how many times you'll use the wide bias for finishing off pieces, and they look really pretty. This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. Thank you for watching. Any notes that I have about what I was trying to describe to you today for this neat project will be in the description. If this has been helpful to you, or you see it as something you might have fun with, please subscribe and hit like.